Hello, class. It's Mr. Walker, and our our question focus today was this a quote from Adolf Hitler, August 22nd, 1939, who, after all, speaks today of the annihilation of the Armenians. And this first lecture I'm going to give you is you've generated your questions, and now we're going to pull back from this quote and see where it stands. And in the packet that I've given you on page 2, here's a fuller accounting of the text. And it comes from a book from a journalist named Louis Lochner. And he was a journalist who was an American, but had lived in Germany and was had interviewed Adolf Hitler twice in the 1920s, and then was present in 1939 during the start of World War II. And so I'd like you to take notes along with me, or the notes that you're going to use to answer your open or closed-ended question. And so before we read a piece of text, the first thing we always look at is we source it. And so we're saying, who is it? Adolf Hitler. And at this time, he was the chancellor who had taken dictatorial powers. He's a dictator of Nazi Germany. It's called Nazi Germany because he outlawed all other political parties. One of those signs of totalitarianism, you only have one political party allowed, of Nazi Germany. This date is significant in terms of historic context. So we've done the POV, Adolf Hitler, his you always look for nationality, German, Nazi German, and his job, the dictator. And then the date, the historic context of this date. This is right before the Germans invade Poland. And so August 22nd, 1939, the Germans invade Poland. Germany invades Poland in September of 1939. Invades Poland in September 1939. So it's just before Germany invades Poland. Okay, that's historic context. And POV cap, so POV, we have the POV. C for historic context, we have the historic context just before invades Poland, which is the start of World War II. That's the historic context. A is for intended audience. Who is the intended audience here? His intended audience to the supreme commanders and commanding generals. Okay? His audience are the commanders and commanding generals. And so when you think about his audience, is he likely to lie to his commanders or commanding generals or be persuasive? No, because they are already generals. What is their job to do? Their job is to take orders from their boss. And so based on this intended audience, this is likely reliable because Hitler is not likely to lie or bend the truth. He's giving orders, and he's going to be specific about giving orders. And then the purpose of this, we'll see that in the text. And we can see that the Q focus, who after all speaks today of the annihilation of the Armenians, comes at the end, okay? And so we're just going to take some notes on, as you read through this, of the background of what he's talking about. So again, Hitler is speaking to his generals right before they invade, giving orders. He writes or speaks, our strength consists in our speed and in our brutality. This idea of speed and brutality has to do with this style of warfare called blitzkrieg. Blitz meaning lightning, krieg meaning war, which was the technology has changed by the 1930s between World War I and World War II. Those slow-moving tanks are now fast tanks. There are airplanes that aren't biplanes anymore that can drop bombs, and the blitzkrieg is part of this strategy. It's a strategy of war. It's the Nazi strategy. Nazi war strategy of fast attacks. Think of a blitz in football where all the defense rushes quickly to get to the quarterback. That's what they do to Poland. It's what they do to attack France later. And brutality. The Nazis were their ideology of the Nazis was fascism. So fascism, which is extreme nationalism. And also, it sees history as a racial struggle, and it's extreme racism. And think back to social Darwinism, of which the Europeans, of different Europeans, Darwinism used. I mean, it was defined by the British eventually, but here it's being used by the Nazis. Social Darwinism. Remember this idea of survival of the fittest race? This is one of the motivations for the Holocaust, survival of the fittest. He places different groups of people into what is called the unfit, or not worthy of life. And so brutality is a part of this philosophy. Speed, strength, brutality, and having no sympathy for the weak, and it's all about glorifying the predator as part of fascism. Okay, and so now he looks at his historical heroes. He says Genghis Khan, who was the leader of the Mongols, an empire that went all the way from China to Europe. Of the Mongols, Genghis Khan led millions of women and children to slaughter with premeditation and a happy heart. So premeditation, this word here, this means it's one of the reasons that someone can get first-degree murder is if someone premeditates or if they plan. So if someone plans on murdering someone and then murders them, that's a lot worse than someone who murders someone in the heat of passion. And so Genghis Khan planned to murder millions of women and children and did it happily. And Hitler's saying this is one of his heroes. This is one of his blueprints. History sees him solely as the founder of a state. It's a matter of indifference to me what a weak Western European civilization will say about me. So Hitler's saying, I know that people will say that I'm a mass murderer, but I don't care because I am going to be the founder of a new state, just like Genghis Khan did. And then here he says it, I have issued the command, and I'll have anybody who utters but one word of criticism executed by a firing squad. So does Hitler is he someone who negotiates? Is he someone who asks for, is democratic in nature? No, he gives orders, and anyone who questions his orders, he's saying he will kill them. And he says this, that our war aim means the goal of our war, okay? An aim, the goal of our war, does not consist in reaching certain lines. So here, before in Mein Kampf, his autobiography, he said that the purpose of Germany of fighting after the Treaty of Versailles is to get its territory back. Remember that territory that was taken from Germany, the Polish corridor, Alsace-Lorraine, its colonies. He's saying that our goal is not to get that territory back. It's something else. But it's in the physical destruction of the enemy. His goal then is not to get certain territory back, but it is to physically destroy the enemy, to annihilate, to murder people. That's the goal. Accordingly, I've placed my death head formations in readiness, for the present only in the east, with orders to them to send to death mercilessly and without compassion men, women, and children of Polish derivation and language. Remember, Poland is just to the east of Germany, and they're about to invade it. And he's saying, what is the goal? Is it to capture Poland? No, the goal is to kill all Polish people. All Polish people. Only thus shall we gain the living space, Lebensraum, which we need. And so what is the ultimate goal? He wants to annihilate all the people who live in the East so that the Germans can move in and live there. That's the purpose of his goal. This isn't, unfortunately, so different than what we've seen in the United States of manifest destiny and westward expansion, of placing Native Americans in reservations and death marches. This is not happening, though, in the 19th century. This is happening in the late 1939 and into the 1940s. It's genocide with more technology. And then he writes, who, after all, speaks today of the annihilation of the Armenians? And so he's saying right here, why he's about to kill Polish people, and Genghis Khan killed millions of women and children. What happened to Armenian people? They were killed and murdered. You're going to find out who did it. And he's saying, did anyone speak up about that? Nope, they didn't. And so therefore, he's going to be able to do the same exact thing to the Polish people. This is his blueprint. And in the next, in the video you're going to watch, you're going to see what happened to the Armenian people and how this, think of this as like a blueprint. What happened to the Armenians, Hitler is going to use it, a genocidal blueprint for Hitler. What happened to the Armenians, he is going to do the same thing to the people of Poland and the Jews of Europe. And then this question right here, why is it important to speak today in 2020 about all genocide? Well, if you don't speak about genocide, as Hitler himself said, what does that allow for? It allows for people to use it as a blueprint to continue to commit genocide. And so who, after all, speaks today? The annihilation of the Armenians. Well, today you're going to speak about the annihilation of the Armenians. We are going to speak about the annihilation of the Armenians so that we remember genocide. And our aim is to identify genocide and then to prevent it. The next video is going to be about the definition of genocide. All right.